Look at this. Chandeliers. Gold. Mosaics laid one tiny tile at a time. Stained glass, lit from within. Marble columns, and bronze statues worn smooth by a million hands. You'd be forgiven for thinking this is a palace, or an opera house, or a museum you'd pay to enter. It's none of those. It's a subway station, and millions of people walk through it, half asleep, every single morning. This is the Moscow Metro. Today, it's one of the busiest transit systems on Earth, around 300 stations, carrying somewhere near 8 to 9 million riders a day. And here's the strange part. It isn't one beautiful station. It's dozens of them, each designed like its own little palace, each with its own theme, its own art, its own light. Which raises a simple question. Why would a country take something as ordinary as a subway, a place you rush through and forget, and turn it into an underground palace? The answer starts in 1935. On the 15th of May, 1935, the first line opened. Just 7 miles of track, 13 stations. Around 250,000 people rode it on that first day. And they didn't just ride it, they came to look at it. For many, it was the most beautiful building they had ever stood inside. Bright, warm, clean, and completely unlike the cramped apartments most of them went home to. That reaction, that looking up, was not an accident. It was the whole point. The metro was built to be more than transport. It was designed as a set of palaces for the people. The idea that a worker who owned almost nothing could still walk, every day, through marble and gold that once belonged only to tsars. The state ordered its architects to fill these halls with light, with radiance, and to make people look up toward a promised bright future. Let's be clear about what that is. It's propaganda, beauty with a message baked in. But here's the uncomfortable, interesting part. It worked. Because the art is real, and it's still working on the people who ride through it today. So let's actually go down there. Start here, Komsomolskaya. If the whole metro has a throne room, this is it. The ceiling is lined with golden mosaics of Russian military heroes, framed in white Baroque plaster that wouldn't look out of place in an imperial palace. Chandeliers hang the length of the hall, and beneath them, every day, hundreds of thousands of commuters pass one of the busiest interchanges in the whole system, barely looking up. That's the strange magic of this place. What would be a monument anywhere else is, here, just the station you change trains at. Now Mayakovskaya, completely different, and to many, the most beautiful of them all. Instead of heavy stone, it's built on slender columns of polished steel, light, almost weightless. And set into the ceiling are 30-odd mosaics you have to look up to see. A full day of Soviet sky, planes, parachutes, sunflowers, athletes. A bright future painted directly above your head. It won a Grand Prix at the 1939 New York World's Fair. A subway platform as a prize-winning work of art. Then there's Novoslobodskaya and its secret, light. Set into the pillars are 32 panels of stained glass, glowing from inside like the windows of a cathedral. And that's no accident. They were made by the same masters who built church windows, using glass brought from Riga. Underground, with no sky and no sun, the designers simply built their own light and made a chapel out of a train platform. Ploshchad Revolyutsii is the most human of them all. 76 life-size bronze figures, soldiers, sailors, farmers, students, a border guard and his dog, crouched under the arches, frozen mid-action. And look at the dog. Its nose is worn to a brilliant gold, because for almost 90 years, students heading to their exams have rubbed it for luck. Millions of small superstitious touches, one after another, slowly polishing a piece of public art. That's not a museum. That's a living thing. And not all of them shout. Kropotkinskaya is almost restrained. Rows of slender columns that flare open at the top like lilies, lit softly from within. It's so elegant it won the Grand Prix in Paris in 1937. Because remember, all of this is deep underground. The deepest station sits about 74 meters down, one of the deepest in the world. Dozens of these palaces, tens of meters beneath the street, moving 8 to 9 million people a day. Which raises the real question, how did any of this get built? And why? The answer is, at enormous human effort and on purpose. In the 1930s, a young Soviet state that could barely feed its cities poured extraordinary resources into digging these tunnels, much of it by hand, by tens of thousands of workers and volunteers at brutal speed. Because the metro was never only about transport. It was meant to be seen, proof, to citizens and to the wider world, of what the system could build: light, marble, and art, handed to ordinary workers who owned almost nothing. It was, in the most literal sense, a showpiece. A promise you could walk through. Then came the war. In the autumn of 1941, as the front approached Moscow, the palaces became something else entirely: shelter. Every night, tens of thousands of Muscovites came down into the stations to sleep, safe from the bombing. And the metro quietly turned into an underground city, with libraries, a barber, first aid points. Records even tell of a child born down there, in the deep. At Mayakovskaya, the steel and Mosaic station, the government held meetings on the platform, far below the danger. The most beautiful subway ever built spent that winter as the safest room in the city. So how big has it grown? In 2025, the Moscow Metro turned 90, and it's now one of the largest transit systems on Earth. Close to 300 stations. 2.7 billion journeys in 2024 alone. Its newest ring, the Big Circle Line, opened in 2023, is the longest metro ring in the world, nearly 60 kilometers running in a loop beneath the city. 44 of its stations are officially protected as architectural landmarks, a museum you're allowed to commute through. And in 2023, Vnukovo became the first airport in Russia you can reach on a direct metro line. 90 years on, the palace is still being built. Today, none of that history slows anyone down. 8 to 9 million people move through these halls every single day, most of them barely glancing up at the mosaics and the gold. And that might be the most remarkable part. This is world-class art that is completely free, completely ordinary, and completely woven into normal life. Now, is Moscow unique? Not entirely. Stockholm turned its metro into the world's longest art gallery. Cities from London to New York have their own grand old stations. But most of the world decided a subway should be efficient and nothing more. Moscow decided it should be a palace, and then built dozens of them. So the next time your train pulls into a plain concrete box, remember there's a city where the everyday commute runs through marble halls, under chandeliers, past mosaics of a promised paradise. It was built as propaganda. It survived a war. It outlived the state that made it. And it's still there, beautiful, useful, and utterly taken for granted. A palace that millions of people are simply too busy to notice. That's the Moscow Metro.